Well, it's obvious. We're at Aquereberry camp here. In other words, it's home. Now, let's go over here a little bit. If you go from there, you can see a little machine over there. Overall, about 300 yards. That's where the Eureka and Cashier mine are both located. Eureka on this side, Cashier's on the other side. Okay, let's check into these buildings here. The sun is setting, so I have to watch the lens here. Yep. I think this is the dining room. Aha! It's the kitchen and the dining room. Now that looks like a gas stove. Very good. And apparently a gas refrigerator. Here's a suite. Guest suite, I guess. Now I don't see a single source of heating here. That is a stove. Fireplace. Okay. Point of interest here is, of course, it's a cement. Okay, around the corner there's a patio. Now that's interesting. There's pipes there which implies water, but I don't know where you get the water from. And there's the rest home, where everybody goes to rest. Let's walk down this canyon a little bit. Canyons are always interesting. You never know where the gold is hanging out. Well, this is your classic junkyard. What's missing, I was kind of hoped to see, is water. A couple of used bed springs and, wow. I'm not going to go up there and see if it's a one-seater or a two-seater. We'll just assume it's a one-seater. Ah, it looks like a one-seater. Low class. This might be a water tank, which would explain the pipes, but hauling, it's not unusual, by the way, for these miners to haul water 10, 15 miles from a spring. Okay, this must be Pete's mansion. Looks pretty clean. I don't see any rodent droppings here for hantavirus problems. I'm looking for heating. Now there's an electrical wire here. Ooh, linoleum. Electrical. I assure you that's not per code. Oh, it looks like some rodent droppings there. We'll stay away from that room. The one thing these walls tell us is there's no insulation used. They just put in drywall. Oh, not even thin drywall. Ah, a shower. Pipes. That's good news. The old-fashioned union plumbing. The water heater. And that's propane. With an igniter. Wash basin. That's seen its better days. I still don't see a heater. But apparently it has propane. Okay. And the final building. This is probably I don't see any mouse dropping. This is probably a storage area. Could be a freezer. Yeah, this was clearly the pantry for storage. This looks like a gas line. Alrighty. I'm going to get the lens out of the sun. So this is it. Pete's home. Ooh. It's a half a seater here. Oh, it even goes down into a hole, which it should, of course. Okay, so this is Pete's camp, they call it, home. And it's mine. And we'll end the recording here. Okay, this is a historic site that epitomizes the hardships of Death Valley. There's about 24 wagons entered Death Valley, hoping to find a shortcut to the gold fields in California before everybody else did. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Of course, there's no shortcut. Now, from where they entered Death Valley, which is by the Oasis Desert Valley Inn, to here is about 22 miles. Now, look across this terrain. Let's look down here. And they had to pull wagons, oxen, And this is soft dirt here, and the oxen have a hard time pulling the wagons. So of interest, we'll just focus on the Bennett Arcane wagon. He was from Wisconsin, 35 years old, basically a farmer, and his family came here. Then there's a Reverend James Breyer, who's noted for enormous ability to talk and very little ability to work, so his wife did all the work. And the Wade group. The Wade was interesting because he's the only wagon that started and finished with a wagon all the way to Los Angeles. And his history is interesting because on 16 March 1880 he was born in Rochester, England. And his job was that of a coachman to the King of England. Well, anyway, he got married and decided it was richest here in America. Now, a lot of people overlook. I'll just do a quote here. Let me see if I can. So Manly, who's one of the heroes of this era, he wrote, "No part of slaughter of animals wasted." And we're talking about the oxen. How the blood was saved, it was made into a pudding, hair burned off, hide eaten, intestines cleaned out and eaten, and etc., etc. in the water. It's just horrible, the hardships they went through. Now, they realized they couldn't go over those mountains with a wagon here. So they had a meeting, and Bennett made a proposition to the group here. How about we just stay here and we'll send 2 of our youngest men out there. It shouldn't be more than a 10-day journey, so rather than us struggling with the oxen trying to make a living, just hop over those mountains and come back with a bunch of food and horses. And it's only, they said, well, it shouldn't take you more than 10 days. Well, they thought those mountains were like the Sierra Nevada. And I must say, having been skied in Sierra Nevada, they do. So that 10-day estimate became 250 miles of walking. John Rogers, and who was 22 years old, and Manley was 29. They went on that journey. And they arrived in, well, the northern part of Los Angeles in January 1980, got some supplies, 2 horses and a mule. The horses died en route, and actually made it back here.